Hello there, my name is Armando. Before we talk about well-being, routines, discipline, or any of the themes you will find on this channel, I thought it makes sense to briefly tell you who is actually speaking to you. I'm naturally a deeply curious person, especially when it comes to the human experience, including my own. And indeed, across my career, I have worked for over 20 years in executive positions, essentially understanding consumer behavior across different markets and cultures. So basically, I was creating storylines and strategic recommendations out of analysis and observation. As a result, for most of my life, I worked in fairly intense professional environments in different countries, cultures, even different rhythms of life. Most of the time, it was all about fast-paced schedules, high expectations, deadlines, pressure, and like many of the people living inside that kind of world, I feel, I became very interested in the idea of optimization. So, how to be more productive, how to be more efficient, how to be more disciplined, and ideally, how to constantly improve. On the surface, this sounds like a very positive pursuit, but over time, I began noticing something both in myself and in the people around me. We often treat ourselves as problems to be fixed, as if energy, mood, motivation, consistency were simply matters of willpower and control. So if something wasn't working, the assumption was almost always the same with me. I must not be trying hard enough, or I must not be disciplined enough, or even I must be doing something wrong. And that mindset is incredibly common, but also incredibly exhausting. So, what gradually shifted my perspective was not really a dramatic event or a single revelation. It was observation, observing my own patterns, observing friends and colleagues, and observing how differently people respond to similar or even the same challenges. Some people struggle with food, myself included to some extent, others with rest, with movement, with stress, and others simply with slowing down. And yet, despite how personal these struggles are, the advice we receive is often strangely impersonal. So we get generic formulas, rigid systems, one size fits all type of solutions, and at some point I became much more interested in a quieter question. What if most of what we call lack of discipline is actually lack of understanding? Understanding our energy, our habits, our emotional rhythms, understanding our environment, and our very human inconsistencies. Outside of work, I have always been drawn to things that create a sense of presence and grounding. So things like movement. I absolutely love roller skating in parks. Music is always there, nature, and I absolutely love animals. So I don't pursue them as performance activities, but rather as experiences that kind of bring me back to a more natural state of being. And perhaps this is one of the ideas that sits quietly underneath everything I would like to discuss here in this channel. Feeling well is often less about adding more and more about relating differently to what already exists. Your body, your routines, your resistance, your energy, and definitely your expectations. So, this channel is essentially a space for reflection, not instructions or rules or prescriptions, just thoughtful explorations of everyday human experience that many of us do recognize but rarely pause long enough to examine carefully. If any of these themes resonate with you, I am very happy that you are here. If they don't, that's perfectly fine too, because curiosity is personal. But in the next videos, I would like to start sharing some of the perspectives that genuinely changed how I relate to discipline, motivation, habits, and to well-being itself. because many of the things we assume about change are often not as solid as they first appear. So, thank you so very much for listening.